kill me, y'all.
Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
This is Rocky Money Rudolph Jr., a Florida man whose ordinary traffic stop on March 2023 turned into a terrifying fight for survival. What began as a calm and friendly exchange with Deputy Blaze of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office quickly spiraled into chaos, leaving viewers stunned at how fast everything changed. It was supposed to be just a minor violation over dark window tint, but within moments, it became one of the most disturbing body cam videos ever released, a chilling reminder of how a simple encounter can take a deadly turn. These are 6 most disturbing videos caught on camera. On December 28, 2024, hundreds of people in Columbia, South Carolina tuned into a Facebook livestream that would later haunt them for years. A man named Antavius Brown was behind the wheel, speeding down the highway, while police sirens wailed in the background. His voice trembled as he spoke to the camera. "They're behind me."
They behind me. They gonna kill me, y'all. I'm gonna make them kill me, y'all. Today is the day I die.
"They're going to get me. Today is the day I die," he said. Viewers had no idea that what they were witnessing was the tragic end of a chain of events that had begun days earlier, with a domestic argument gone terribly wrong. Brown, 36, was a local rapper and entrepreneur known by his stage name, Get It Brown. He had dreams of success and had once been admired in his community for his ambition and his music. He lived with his girlfriend, Nuda Tapia, a hard-working single mother and media personality who hosted a podcast called The Most Popular Podcast. To the outside world, they appeared to be a creative couple with big goals, but behind closed doors, tension had been building for months. Tapia had decided to end the relationship and asked Brown to move out by the end of the year. She was ready to focus on her business and her children, but Brown took the breakup hard. He felt betrayed and humiliated, and in the days leading up to the tragedy, his social media posts turned darker and more unsettling. On Christmas Eve, he began posting messages that hinted at despair and anger. "Life has been a journey, and I'm blessed no matter what way it goes," one post read. But then came another. "When I know I'm right, I'll go to war with whoever and stand my ground, win, lose, or draw." Friends noticed the change, and so did Tapia's mother. Tapia's mother saw the warning signs and publicly commented on his post, calling him out for his behavior and pleading for the safety of her daughter. "If anything happens to my child, everyone already knows who was violent," she wrote. Her comment made the situation more public, and it only seemed to fuel Brown's anger. Not long after, Brown went live on Facebook. His voice was full of emotion as he spoke about his frustrations, his love, and his pain. "I put everything I have into what I do," he said. "My time, my effort, my energy. Don't let anyone undermine what you've built." The video painted a picture of a man spiraling, someone struggling with rejection and the loss of control. When people online began mocking him with rumors about his personal life, it pushed him further toward the edge. Tapia also went live around that time, trying to reclaim her voice. She spoke calmly about her podcast and her achievements, emphasizing that she had built her brand on her own. She said, "Nobody made me. I worked for everything I have." But privately, she was afraid. In messages to friends, she admitted that she feared for her life, saying, "No, my life and others are in danger." That fear became reality. On the morning of December 28th, Brown showed up at Tapia's apartment furious, convinced she had been unfaithful. What started as a heated argument soon turned violent. Tapia's 2 children were home and heard every word. In a fit of rage, Brown pulled out a gun and threatened her. The children, terrified but brave, rushed in to defend their mother. One of them broke down a locked door, while both tried to pull Brown away. Amid the chaos, Tapia managed to break free and run toward the door, her children right behind her. But before they could escape, Brown fired. The bullet struck Tapia in the leg. She later told police that she thought she was going to die in that moment. Yet even after shooting her, Brown didn't stop. He forced her into his car and drove away, leaving the terrified children behind in the blood-stained apartment. As he drove toward a nearby hospital, Brown kept the gun close, alternating between pointing it at Tapia and at himself. When they arrived at Midlands Medical Center, nurses immediately noticed Tapia's injury. Her clothes were bloodied, and her limp was obvious. While Brown held her arm tightly, she whispered to one of the nurses, "He's the one who shot me. Please don't tell him I said it. But he's going back home. Please don't let him hurt the kids." The hospital staff quickly called the police while trying to keep Brown calm until help could arrive. Meanwhile, officers rushed to the apartment, finding blood on the floor and doorframe. Tapia's children, though physically unharmed, were deeply traumatized. They told officers what had happened through tears, describing how they had fought to protect their mother. Back at the hospital, Brown became agitated and eventually fled before police could reach him. An alert went out. He was armed, dangerous, and driving a silver Dodge sedan. When police spotted his car near Two Notch Road, they ordered him to step out with his hands up. Instead, Brown slammed the car into reverse and sped away. That was when he started another Facebook livestream, the same one that would later horrify viewers around the world. "They're behind me. They're going to take me out. Today is the day I die," he said as he drove recklessly through the streets of Colombia. His voice wavered between anger and despair. "I gave it all I could," he repeated. "I'm sorry, y'all. I love y'all." Hundreds of people watched in real time as the chase continued. Police cars followed closely behind, sirens echoing through the city. Brown's car sped toward a busy intersection at Garner's Ferry Road and Hazelwood Road. The light ahead was red, but he didn't slow down. At that same moment, a man named Ryan Heyman was turning left in his Toyota 4Runner. It was an ordinary Saturday morning for Ryan, who was simply out for a drive with his dog. What happened next was devastating. Brown's car plowed into the side of Ryan's vehicle at tremendous speed. The force of the impact flipped the Toyota, which rolled several times before coming to rest upside down. Brown's car spun out of control, crashing into two other vehicles. Glass shattered across the pavement as smoke filled the air. Ryan and his dog were killed instantly. They never knew what was coming. The live stream kept running, capturing the chaos, the sounds of crumbling metal, alarms, and distant screams. Moments later, a single gunshot echoed through Brown's car. Police later determined that he had turned the weapon on himself, inflicting a fatal wound. When first responders arrived, the scene was almost too much to process. 3 cars were destroyed. Injured drivers screamed for help, and in the middle of it all was Brown, gravely wounded but still alive. Paramedics worked to save him, as they do for every life, no matter the circumstances. He was rushed to the hospital, the very same one where Tapia had been taken hours earlier. Despite the doctor's efforts, his injuries were too severe. Just after 12:30 that afternoon, Antavius Brown was pronounced dead. Tapia survived her wound, but the emotional scars for her and her children ran deep. They had experienced unimaginable terror and loss in just a few short hours. The hardest part of all came for the family of Ryan Heyman. He was remembered as a kind, joyful man who loved taking his nieces and nephews fishing and to concerts. His only mistake that morning was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Brown's family also mourned, confused and broken by what had happened. His mother posted online, "My firstborn is gone." The tragedy left 2 families shattered, and a community struggling to understand how anger and despair had turned so deadly. The Facebook Live video, though later removed, remained etched in the memories of everyone who saw it. It served as a grim reminder of how unchecked emotions and online escalation can lead to irreversible tragedy. In the end, 3 lives were lost, 1 by violence, 1 by consequence, and 1 by heartbreak. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. On the 11th of November, 2023, the quiet city of La Crosse, Wisconsin, woke up to what would soon become one of its most shocking and bizarre incidents. It all started with what seemed like a simple misunderstanding at a gas station, a moment that spiraled into something no one could have imagined. That afternoon, 31-year-old Cody Anderson walked into a local convenience store, just looking to buy a couple of cartons of cigarettes. When the cashier politely asked for his ID, Cody admitted he didn't have one.
And I said, "Can I see your ID?" Because he looked younger. I didn't recognize him. He goes, "I don't have my ID."
According to store policy, the employee couldn't complete the sale without verifying his age. What followed was a tense exchange. Cody pleaded, asking how much it would cost, even offering to do anything to get the cigarettes. But when the employee refused, he suddenly reached over the counter, grabbed the cigarettes, and bolted out of the store. At first, the shocked employee instinctively ran after him, before realizing it wasn't worth the risk. She quickly called the police, reporting the theft and giving them Cody's license plate number. Interestingly, in his rush to flee, Cody accidentally dropped a $100 bill on the ground, a strange twist to an already senseless act. But what happened next would turn this petty theft into a full-scale emergency. About 25 minutes later, officers received another call, this time from the La Crosse Regional Airport. Witnesses claimed that a car had rammed through a locked gate and was now speeding down the runway. To everyone's disbelief, it was the same suspect from the gas station, Cody Anderson. Airport staff watched in horror as Cody's vehicle spun in circles near a small private jet. He was seen driving recklessly, doing donuts on the tarmac, and eventually coming to a stop beside one of the parked planes. But then, things took an even darker turn. Cody stepped out of his car, wielding a knife, and threatened an employee before forcing his way onto the jet. By now, police and airport security were rushing to the scene. Officers on the radio reported that the suspect was inside the cockpit and might be trying to start the aircraft. A crew member later confirmed that the plane's systems were indeed powered on, suggesting Cody might have had some knowledge of operating it, or at least thought he did. Authorities quickly formed a perimeter and prepared for a potential standoff. Negotiators tried to communicate with Cody, urging him to step out peacefully. At first, he refused, clutching the knife and shouting incoherently from inside the jet. Officers attempted to use beanbag rounds and non-lethal deterrence, but he remained defiant, ducking in and out of sight behind the cockpit's controls. The situation escalated further when Cody began making alarming statements. He claimed to be in possession of explosives and referred to himself as a bomber, insisting he would detonate the plane if anyone came closer. He shouted phrases that alarmed officers, prompting them to treat the threat with utmost seriousness.
Police car, come on now!
I will cut you! I am a suicide bomber!
You're under arrest, come out!
Allah Akbar!
Despite the chaos, police kept their composure. They continued trying to reason with Cody, telling him no one wanted to harm him. They just wanted him to come out safely. Officers assured him they would provide food, water, and medical attention if he complied. At one point, Cody even asked for something to drink and mentioned needing to use the restroom, giving negotiators small openings to try to calm him down. Inside the plane, Cody could be seen pacing near the cockpit, sometimes sitting in the pilot's seat, sometimes standing near the stairway. Officers repeatedly told him to drop the knife and show his hands. After several tense minutes, he finally threw the knife onto the steps, but refused to exit the plane immediately. Police brought in a specialized armored vehicle, known as a Bearcat, and positioned it directly in front of the aircraft to prevent any chance of takeoff. With that, they regained some control of the situation. However, Cody's behavior grew more erratic. He began talking about having C4 explosives and 2 firearms, both supposedly obtained from the government. Officers carefully questioned him to determine if there was any truth to his claims, but his answers were inconsistent and confusing. When police asked if he truly had explosives, he repeated vague statements about wanting to blow up the plane but offered no evidence. To ensure everyone's safety, officers worked behind the scenes to disable the jet. They managed to cut off the main power supply, effectively preventing it from starting or moving. This step significantly reduced the threat, but Cody still refused to surrender. Negotiations stretched on. Officers tried to build rapport, asking him simple questions, whether he had family, a pet, or anyone waiting for him. Cody responded quietly, saying he had no one, no wife, no children, not even a pet. It was a sad and telling moment, revealing a man who might have been deeply isolated and struggling long before this day. Meanwhile, a search of his nearby truck uncovered multiple knives, a stun device, and ammunition, but no actual explosives. This discovery reassured police, but they continued to treat the situation as potentially dangerous. After nearly 45 minutes of negotiations, Cody stopped responding altogether. Fearing for his safety, the tactical team decided to move in. They used a shield formation to enter the plane cautiously, ready for any sudden reaction. When they reached him, Cody was unresponsive, but still alive. Officers quickly secured the scene and ensured no one else was inside the aircraft. The plane was checked thoroughly to confirm there were no explosive devices or other hazards. To the officers' relief, no one was harmed throughout the entire ordeal. Later investigations revealed that just a week earlier, Cody had been arrested in a nearby county for reckless driving. Reports stated he had been caught spinning his vehicle through a farmer's field while impaired. After spending some time in jail, he was released on bond, only to find himself in another confrontation days later. Following this disturbing incident at the airport, Cody Anderson faced multiple charges. These included attempted carjacking, possession of a weapon, attempted armed robbery, making threats, creating public alarm, resisting law enforcement, and damaging property. Given the seriousness of his actions and the involvement of airport security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was called in to assist with the case, potentially adding federal charges. In the end, his bond was set at $500,000. The stolen cigarettes, worth around $200, were eventually recovered from the scene, a strangely ironic reminder of how something so small had triggered such a massive response. The incident left the entire La Crosse community shaken, not only by the danger it presented but by the sheer unpredictability of it all. It was a sobering example of how quickly a situation can escalate when emotions, desperation, and confusion collide. And though no lives were lost that day, the footage from the police body cameras showing hours of negotiation, patience, and restraint remains a chilling reminder of how fragile the line between chaos and control can truly be. On July 18, 2025, officers in Logan City, Utah, responded to a late-night call about a woman behaving erratically in a parking lot. The report described her as screaming inside her car, fighting with herself, and appearing completely detached from reality. When officers Pettingill and Veyes arrived on scene, they found the woman sitting alone in her vehicle. But before they could even make contact, she suddenly sped off, forcing the police into an unpredictable high-speed pursuit. The woman was later identified as 37-year-old Kendi Ann Viodor. At first, officers decided to follow her cautiously, hoping she might calm down or stop on her own. But it didn't take long for her to make her first reckless move. She blew through a parking lot, clipping another vehicle before tearing down the road at dangerous speeds. Her speeds are up to 85, an officer reported, his voice tense over the radio. Within minutes, the situation had escalated beyond control. As Kendi ran stop signs and red lights, her car swerved unpredictably, narrowly missing bystanders and traffic. Officer Hammond soon joined the chase, radioing that the suspect had just run a red light at 100 East and was now heading northbound. Then came the first collision, a near head-on impact with Hammond's cruiser. Somehow both cars managed to keep moving, but the chase had turned violent. The pursuit tore through neighborhoods and intersections, sparks flying as Kendi's bumper dragged along the asphalt. The tension inside the patrol cars was palpable. Pettingill fastened her seatbelt, but Officer Vernage didn't, a decision that would soon cost him. As Kendi tried to lose the officers, she abruptly turned into a dealership parking lot. Moments later, her vehicle smashed head-on into Hammond's car again, the impact slamming Vaya's head against the dashboard camera mount. Sirens echoed through the dark streets as officers shouted commands, their adrenaline driving them forward. When the smoke settled, officers surrounded Kendi's car. "Stop the car," they yelled. Finally, she gave up, raising her trembling hands as they pulled her from the wreckage and placed her in custody. Paramedics were called, and a supervising sergeant rushed to check on the injured officers. Pettingill's right hand and wrist were swollen, Vaya's forehead was bleeding, and Hammond, the most seriously hurt, groaned from pain in his abdomen and back. Still, their first concern wasn't themselves. "Is she in custody yet?" the sergeant asked repeatedly, his voice cutting through the chaos. While officers tended to the wounded, Kendi sat on the curb, shaking uncontrollably. When they tried to escort her to a cruiser, she suddenly panicked, pleading for a female officer.
Come on. No, you don't get a choice. Nope. No, you don't get a choice now.
Please, I didn't have any attention. Yeah, I was just a lot of trauma and flashbacks, and I just really want a girl cop. Not you.
"Please, a girl cop, please," she cried, her voice cracking between sobs. "I've been having flashbacks and trauma. Please, a girl." Her fear didn't seem like the reaction of someone defiant or angry. It sounded like someone breaking down completely. Even after she was gently seated in the patrol car, Kendi's mental state unraveled further. She began muttering incoherently, talking to someone who wasn't there. "They've been shouting that whole time," she whispered. "They found me. I'm starting to get murdered." She spoke as if haunted by invisible voices, her words slipping between delusion and terror. The officers, though cautious, treated her with care. "Take a deep breath," one of them said softly. "We'll get you some water soon." When a male officer tried to read her Miranda rights, she grew uneasy again. "Can I talk to a girl?" she asked. Officer Pettingill stood nearby, assuring her she wasn't alone. "Kendi, I'm right here with you," she said. But the suspect's fear only deepened. "I have a lot of sexual assault trauma," Kendi confessed, "and I can't talk to him."
You have to deal with him, okay?
Can I request? Can I?
I can't change calls. We get assigned a
But
call.
I have a lot of sexual assault trauma,
Okay,
and I'm really scared of
Candy,
men.
I'm gonna be right here with you, okay?
Kenny.
But
Despite the effort to calm her, she refused to speak further, and eventually invoked her right to remain silent, asking for a lawyer. Moments later, she began whispering again, this time to an unseen companion. "If you're with me," she murmured, "you're going to need to shower your head. Their signals are still here." It was clear she was in the midst of a mental breakdown. For safety, officers decided to transport her to a hospital for evaluation before booking. When officers searched her wrecked vehicle, they found THC and marijuana vapes, nothing that explained the depth of her mental state. But there was one more surprise. Among her belongings, they discovered that she was a teacher, employed by the Davis School District as an art instructor. "She's an art teacher," one officer said quietly, almost in disbelief. "Wow, she was nice too." The night had left 3 officers injured, and an entire department shaken. Officer Pettingill suffered hand and wrist injuries. Officer Vase had a deep cut on his forehead, and Officer Hammond endured the worst of it, abdominal and spinal injuries, along with severe bruising to his legs and wrists. As for Kendi Ann Viador, she was booked into the Cache County Jail on multiple charges. These included 6 counts of assault on a peace officer with a deadly weapon, 1 count of failure to respond to an officer's signal to stop resulting in injury, reckless driving, a stop sign violation, and failure to remain at an accident involving injury. The case remains ongoing. According to a statement from the Logan City Police Department posted on Facebook, all 3 officers are expected to recover, but for those who watched the dashcam footage, the memory lingers. The flashing lights, the twisted metal, the sound of panic in Kendi's voice, a haunting reminder of how quickly a routine call can spiral into a disturbing scene that no one will ever forget. On August 21, 2021, a quiet evening at a country inn suites in Bedford, New Hampshire, turned into a scene no guest would ever forget. 2 men checked in just after 4:30 in the afternoon. One was 28-year-old Nathan Cashman. The other was 42-year-old Theodore Lucky. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. People checked in, corridors hummed with the low noise of a normal hotel, and guests settled in for the night. But by late evening, something very dark had been set in motion behind those hotel doors. A witness staying on the 3rd floor later told investigators she had heard blood-curdling cries from the hallway. She described a voice screaming for help over and over, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps and slamming on the walls. She did not open her door. Like many others, she stayed inside, terrified to look.
It sounded like a man screaming at the top of his voice, help me, and several times, 3 or 4 times. And then I heard somebody, it sounded like footsteps following him.
Security cameras captured more of the unfolding events, and one guest on a lower floor would later describe seeing 2 men in a hallway, one appearing to strike the other with the hose of a fire extinguisher. When the elevator dinged, the men turned. One shouted for the police, and the other began to move in the guest caller's direction. That witness ran back to their room and frantically called the front desk. Minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. Footage and photographs from the hotel show a chaotic escape attempt. One witness saw Nathan take a desperate leap from a 2nd-floor window, blood on the frame, and the window pane shattered below. He fell in a bid to save his life.
When I came out, I look up. I said, oh man, this dude jumped out the window trying to save his life. You know what I'm saying?
A short while later, witnesses reported seeing a man running, and then someone pursuing him holding a large blade. The attack continued in and out of the lobby as guests looked on, frozen and horrified. Security footage shows Nathan fighting to move away, pleading for help as the other man pressed the assault. The front desk clerk, despite being on the phone with emergency services, found himself dangerously close to the violence before he and other staff moved to get guests to safety. When paramedics finally reached the scene, they found Nathan gravely hurt. The medical team noted a deep cut across his neck and severe injuries consistent with a violent assault. He later died from the wounds he had suffered that night. Photographs taken as investigators processed the scene showed the weapon used, and those images would become key evidence in the investigation that followed. While police worked the hotel, more information began to arrive from an unexpected place more than 250 miles away. A frantic phone call had reached the home of Theodore's mother in New Jersey. She described her son as hysterical and saying he had just killed someone in New Hampshire. He sounded confused and distraught, telling his mother he was covered in blood and saying goodbye as if he expected never to return. Her account, passed to officers in New Hampshire, helped connect a man at the hotel to a troubled history. Theodore had recently been released from custody over Mother's Day weekend, and records later showed he had served time for serious offenses in the past. He and Nathan had met during incarceration, and according to investigators, their relationship had been complicated and fraught with arguments. Not long after the call, Theodore turned himself into police. He spoke with his parents and insisted he was ready to go in.
I love you, Mom.
I love you too. Where you at? What police station you at?
I want to find what police station is this? Bedford. Yeah. I took somebody's life, Mom. I did it.
At the station, he was taken into custody without further incident. During interviews, Theodore acknowledged that he and Nathan had been in a relationship for several years, and that tensions had flared in the days leading up to the attack. He described feeling betrayed when Nathan ended the relationship and spoke about discovering that Nathan had been involved with someone else. Those emotions, he told detectives, had built into anger and a desire to cause pain. In his own words, he admitted to attacking Nathan, though the way he described the violence varied between his statements. As detectives cleared the hotel, they discovered a second victim. Security footage had captured Theodore earlier in the day, checking in with a 60-year-old man named David Hanford. David was Theodore's longtime acquaintance, and according to reports, an ex-partner. When officers knocked on the door of David's room, they received no answer. Once they entered, they found David unresponsive and bound to the bed. He was covered by a blanket and had tape over his mouth and nose. It appeared he had been incapacitated for some time. Investigators later concluded he had been deprived of the ability to breathe and had died at the scene. Photographs from the room and details of the bindings made it clear David had been restrained and left unable to call for aid. During questioning, Theodore offered an explanation for David's death that chilled the officers. He told investigators he had kept David in the room because he believed David knew about his plans to harm Nathan. He said he did not want David to warn Nathan or interfere. Whether David was aware of what was coming or believed he was part of a planned weekend remains a tragic and unresolved detail. Theodore's account suggested he was preparing for a confrontation and feared anyone who might expose his intentions. Detectives dug into the timeline. 2 weeks before the hotel incident, friends had observed a fresh mark on Nathan's neck. A week later, Nathan told Theodore their relationship was over. Theodore described feeling betrayed and said the split left him reeling. The night at the hotel began as a visit, but it quickly deteriorated into a brutal confrontation that would leave 2 men dead and a string of witnesses traumatized. The violence played out in public spaces of the hotel, in front of guests and staff, and stretched the capacity of emergency responders who tried to save lives and secure the scene. On November 7, 2022, Theodore pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. The court sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He is currently serving his sentence at the New Hampshire State Prison. For the families of Nathan and David, the legal resolution offered a measure of closure, but it could not erase the images, the sounds, or the deep sense of loss left behind. This episode is a sober reminder of how quickly ordinary moments can be shattered by violence. Guests who came to the hotel for rest found themselves witnesses to chaos, and first responders faced the grim task of caring for the injured and piecing together the motive. In the weeks and months that followed, investigators worked to untangle the relationships and the choices that led to that terrible night. What remains is the memory of frightened guests huddled in their rooms, the echo of someone calling for help, and the sobering reality that tragedy can sometimes unfold where we least expect it. On July 20th, 2022. A calm summer afternoon in Appleton, Wisconsin, turned tense when police were called to a domestic disturbance. Two officers from the Appleton Police Department arrived at a quiet suburban neighborhood after receiving a call from two women asking for help. One of the women, visibly shaken, explained that her sister had just come home from work to find her husband angry and behaving aggressively. He had been drinking while caring for their children, and the situation quickly escalated. Fearing for her sister's safety, she drove over to pick her up so they could take the kids to the park and get away from the house. But as she pulled into the driveway, the man allegedly jumped into his car, revved the engine, and nearly collided with her vehicle while trying to leave. When the officers approached the house, they found the husband standing outside, visibly upset. One of the officers greeted him politely and asked if they could talk, but from the start, the man was defensive.
No, I've got a reason to talk to you.
Okay, well, we're here because... Okay.
You're on my property, he insisted, his voice rising. The officers calmly explained that they were there because of a disturbance call and wanted to make sure everyone was safe. The man refused to cooperate, repeating over and over that it was his house, his property, and that they had no right to be there. Despite their attempts to defuse the situation, the man's agitation grew. His words were slurred, and his tone shifted between angry and incoherent. The officers reassured him that no one was inside his home, and that they were not trying to enter. They just wanted to speak with him about what had happened earlier, but each attempt to reason with him only seemed to make him more frustrated. "I'm an American citizen," he shouted. "You don't belong on my property." Meanwhile, the officers continued speaking with his wife, who stood nearby trying to explain what had happened. She told them she knew her husband was intoxicated. He had messaged her earlier that day, and she could tell by his words that he had been drinking heavily again. "He's an alcoholic," she said quietly. "This happens when he's drunk. He starts saying things that don't make sense, accuses me of things that aren't true, and gets really angry." She explained that she had decided to end the relationship and was planning to leave him.
So I was like, we're done, because I don't want to be with him no more. And then he was like, okay, we're done, okay. And he argued with me a little bit, but I blocked him out.
Her sister's arrival was meant to help her and the children get out of the house safely. Nothing physical had happened that day, but she feared it could escalate. The officers listened carefully, noting that while the man appeared intoxicated and angry, they didn't yet have enough evidence to confirm he was drunk. Legally, they needed more than suspicion. They needed clear signs of intoxication to take further action. As they continued their conversation, the man reappeared near the garage, holding 2 Budweiser cans. He began pacing around the driveway, mumbling to himself and occasionally shouting at the officers to get off his property. The officers noted that the cans weren't necessarily proof he had driven under the influence, especially since they weren't in the vehicle he had used earlier. Still, his behavior raised concern. The officers told him that his wife needed to collect some of her belongings so she could leave with her sister and the kids. The man initially resisted but then agreed, saying, "Whatever she wants, she can take it." One officer informed him that they would be accompanying her into the house to make sure everyone stayed safe. The man muttered something under his breath and reluctantly stepped aside. As they moved toward the entrance, his tone changed again. He began shouting, accusing the officers of having no right to enter his home. "You don't belong here. Get out of my house," he yelled. The officers tried to calm him down, but the argument quickly escalated. His wife, standing nearby, pleaded with him to stop. "Please, just let them help me," she said softly, but he wouldn't listen. When one of the officers stepped closer, the man suddenly tensed. "Back up," he shouted. "Don't touch me." The officers raised their hands and told him to relax, warning him that if he didn't calm down, they might have to detain him for safety reasons. "You need to calm down," one officer repeated. "No one's here to hurt you." But the man was beyond reasoning. Moments later, his behavior took a dangerous turn. As the officers stood at a distance trying to speak with him, he began pacing aggressively, shouting racial accusations and demanding that they leave. His wife and sister were ushered to the side, while the officers maintained a calm but cautious stance. Then, suddenly, the man reached for an object near the porch. The officers immediately drew back, shouting commands for him to drop whatever he was holding. "Put it down, right now, drop it," they repeated firmly.
You need to stop. Put it down now. Put it down now. Put it down right now. Put it down now.
The tension was unbearable. The officers had seconds to decide how to respond. "Put it down," they shouted again as the man stepped forward, still yelling. Finally, one of the officers drew his taser, warning him to turn around and comply. "Turn around right now, or you will be tased," the officer said in a clear, commanding voice. After a brief standoff, the man finally dropped the object and raised his hands, but continued shouting insults as they placed him in handcuffs. Once he was safely detained, the situation slowly calmed. The officers escorted his wife back inside to collect her things while her sister comforted the children. Outside, the man continued to shout from the patrol car, accusing the officers of being unfair and using harsh language toward them. The officers remained composed, quietly finishing their reports and ensuring everyone was safe. After reviewing the footage, the Appleton Police Department determined that the officers had handled the situation appropriately and with restraint. Despite being provoked multiple times, the husband was charged with disorderly conduct and making threats toward law enforcement. His case was sent to court, though the details of his sentencing remain undisclosed. The footage of this incident later circulated online, sparking discussions about domestic conflicts, police restraint, and the importance of de-escalation in tense situations. Many viewers noted how patient the officers remained, even when being shouted at repeatedly. Others reflected on how quickly an argument between partners can spiral out of control when emotions and alcohol mix. For the woman involved, the night served as a turning point. She later told officers that she was relieved no one got hurt, and that the children were safe. It wasn't easy to see her husband like that, but she knew she needed to make a change for her family's peace of mind. The Appleton incident stands as a reminder of how fragile calm can be, and how essential it is for officers to balance authority with compassion. It also sheds light on the struggles that come with addiction, stress, and domestic tension, problems that can escalate in seconds if not handled with care. That evening in Appleton could have ended far worse, but thanks to steady communication and restraint, the officers managed to prevent a potential tragedy and ensure that everyone, including the suspect, walked away alive. On a quiet afternoon, in early March 2023, a routine traffic stop in Florida turned into one of the most unsettling encounters ever caught on a police body cam. It began like any other, calm, professional, and seemingly ordinary. Deputy Blaze of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office pulled over a driver named Rocky Money Rudolph Jr. The reason? The tint on his car windows was far too dark, allowing only 3% of light to pass through, which was well below the legal limit in Florida. Blaze approached the vehicle, explaining politely that the front window tint could only be 25%, and the back, 15%. Rudolph seemed cooperative at first, rolling his window halfway down as requested, and providing his documents. The deputy even complimented him on his name, laughing that it was the best one he'd come across in years. It was an interaction that felt casual, almost friendly, the kind that happens thousands of times a day across the country. As Blaze reviewed the registration, he noticed it had technically expired but decided not to issue a citation. Instead, he calmly explained that Rudolph needed to renew it before the end of the month. Their small talk continued, with Blaze mentioning how busy he'd been lately, and joking that even on Rudolph's day off, everything else seemed to be closed too. For a moment, nothing about this stop seemed unusual, until the deputy picked up the faint scent of something suspicious coming from the vehicle. Blaze leaned slightly closer to the driver's window, his tone shifting from casual to cautious. "Mr. Rudolph," he said, "is there any reason I'd smell something like marijuana coming from your car?"
Is there any reason why there would be a faint of weed coming out of your vehicle? Do you smoke? Do you have any friends that smoke? Anything like that? No.
Rudolph looked surprised and denied it immediately. He said he didn't smoke and didn't have any friends who did. The deputy wasn't accusing him of anything serious. He just wanted to confirm. But the tension in Rudolph's voice grew slightly sharper, and his nervous laughter didn't go unnoticed. Trying to stay calm, Blaze asked him to turn off the vehicle. His tone was still even, not aggressive but firm. "Go ahead and shut the car off for me," he said. Rudolph hesitated. The deputy repeated the request. "I smell something and you don't have a medical card. I just need you to turn it off." At that point, everything began to shift. The friendly air from earlier was gone, replaced with silence and unease. Then, without warning, the vehicle began to inch forward. "Stop the car," Blaze ordered, his voice now filled with urgency. "Put your hands up." But the driver didn't stop. In a split second, the situation escalated into chaos. According to the sheriff's report, as the SUV began to roll, Deputy Blaze found himself gripping the side of the moving vehicle, his body hanging halfway out of the driver's window. What happened next was as dangerous as it was shocking. Rudolph allegedly reached toward the deputy's holster, appearing to try to grab his firearm. "Stop the car," Blaze shouted again and again.
Listen to marijuana, bro. Listen. Do me a favor. I'm telling you right now. Stop!
The SUV came to a brief halt, and Rudolph insisted that he had done nothing wrong. But before the officer could regain control, the driver reached again toward the gun and suddenly hit the accelerator. The vehicle sped forward, heading straight toward the nearby interstate. Deputy Blaze, still clinging to the side, fought to hold on as the SUV gained speed. The situation had gone from a calm conversation about window tint to a life-threatening struggle in just seconds. Fearing for his life, Blaze drew his weapon and fired at the driver, striking Rudolph in the leg. Even then, the car didn't stop right away. For about 200 yards, it continued down the road, swerving wildly before veering sharply to the right. The motion threw Blaze to the ground, leaving him with minor injuries as the SUV sped off. Authorities were immediately alerted, and a county-wide search began. Helicopters and patrol units scoured the area for hours before Rudolph was finally found hiding at a relative's home. He was taken to the hospital, where he was treated for his leg injury. When officers searched the abandoned SUV, they discovered something that deepened the gravity of the situation: a handgun that had been reported stolen 3 years earlier. That discovery added a troubling layer to an already tense case. Deputy Blaze, though bruised and shaken, was fortunate to have survived. The incident, later released on body cam footage, spread rapidly across the internet, shocking viewers who watched the routine stop spiral into near disaster in real time. Many found it deeply disturbing, not just because of the danger involved, but because of how quickly a calm civil interaction had turned into a violent confrontation. It's one of those rare moments where a split second determines everything, where trust, fear, and human instinct collide. Watching the footage, you can hear the genuine effort from the officer to de-escalate, to keep the situation under control, and to make it home safely that day. Yet, despite all efforts, it became a chilling reminder of how unpredictable even the most routine police encounters can be. In the days that followed, authorities released more details about what had happened. They confirmed that Rudolph faced several charges, including resisting an officer and possession of a stolen firearm. However, his hospital stay delayed the legal process for some time. Deputy Blaze returned to duty after recovering from his injuries, and the sheriff's office commended him for his restraint under extreme pressure. The event sparked conversations online about law enforcement safety, citizen compliance, and the fine line between caution and chaos during traffic stops. What made this particular footage so disturbing wasn't only the violence or danger, it was how human it all felt. The calm voice of the deputy in the beginning, the friendly jokes, the ordinary tone of a routine stop. Everything felt normal until it wasn't. And in that instant, every viewer watching could feel the thin thread between peace and panic snap right before their eyes. This incident serves as a sobering reminder of how fragile everyday moments can be, and how quickly they can turn into something no one expects. It's a story that started with a dark-tinted window, but ended with a scene that would haunt anyone who's ever seen it. A testament to how real-life events can be more unsettling than any movie ever made. That is why, even today, the footage remains one of the most disturbing videos caught on camera, not because of its visuals alone, but because of what it reveals about human nature, fear, and the unpredictable turns of real life. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this video informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what we drop next. We cover stories like this almost every day, and trust me, you don't want to be left behind. If you can't wait until the next upload, there are more videos popping up on your screen in just a few seconds. Click one and keep watching. Until then, take care. I'm out.